Greetings and good afternoon. Welcome to the Jackson Public School District Board Meeting. Board of Trustees, faculty, friends, and constituents of Jackson. We welcome you to this board meeting. We will first have our Pledge of Allegiance, and the introduction will be by Mr. Gary Hanna, Area Superintendent 3.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Alexandra Bailey is the eldest daughter of Billy and Sylvia Bailey. She's currently an 8th grade student at Chastain Middle School. Her favorite subjects are math and science. She is a member of the Chastain volleyball team. Her extracurricular activities include dance, drummer, and karate. Alexandra attends the Church of Christ, Cynthia Church of Christ Holiness, where she enjoys singing in the choir, being a member of the Bible quiz team. Alexandra's goal in life is to one day to become a well-known entertainer. At this time, she will do the pledge in English and in French.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now in French. J'engage ma fidélité au drapeau des États-Unis d'Amérique et à la République qui représente une nation bajo Dios inaccessible avec liberté et justice pour tous.
Ms. Bailey, if you would remain, we have one of our colleagues to present a plaque for your participation, and congratulations on being able to do that in English and French.
Thank you so much.
Stay there, we're going to get your picture.
Yeah.
We're going to get your picture.
Alexandria, do you have anybody with you here this evening? Parents, friends, anyone from Chastain?
Nobody from Chastain but Mr. Michael, my mom and dad, Billy and Sylvia Bailey, my little sister, little brother, Layla, and Billy Jr.
We applaud them. Thank you so much. All right, we will have now a moment of inspiration by Reverend Arthur Alvin Sutton.
Okay. All right.
He's going to be introduced by our colleague, Mr. Ricky Jones.
Okay. I can put this to the side.
Go ahead on. I yield the floor. You didn't give me 2 minutes, no how. Took that long to put my shoes on.
We're following the appropriate protocol. Pastor Arthur Alvin Sutton is a pastor of Progressive Missionary Baptist Church here in Jackson, Mississippi. He is a graduate of Forest Hill High School and Jackson State University with a BA in Criminal Justice. He currently serves as president of Forest Hill High School PTSA. Presently, he is employed with Jackson Public Schools as the Dropout Prevention Coordinator and formerly a teacher at Wingfield High School. Pastor Sutton received the Wingfield High School Star Teacher of the Month in 2007, 2008, and also other numerous awards and recognitions throughout his tenure. Pastor Sutton is a family man and resides in Jackson, Mississippi with his wife and the former Vonnie R. Gentry. They are the proud parents of 3 beautiful children, fondly called by Pastor Sutton the A, B's, and C's, Brittany, Ashley, and Courtney. All right. Please welcome Pastor Arthur Sutton.
Amen. God bless you. Great evening to be here at this board meeting. I don't take it lightly. I don't have but 2 minutes, so I got to get down to business. Protocol has already been established to the superintendent, to the board, to my boss, Dr. Calvin Lockett. It's a blessing to be here. I had to think about this thing about inspiration. How could I inspire somebody to do something that they probably already know how to do it? And I was thinking about growing up as a child. Dad and Mom would always get us dressed, and first thing they would tell us, you go to school, but don't do anything to mess up my name. And it took some time for that to really sink in, to really figure out what they was talking about. But as I matriculated through Westside Junior High School to Woodville Heights, to Blackburn, then to Forest Hill, then graduated from Jackson State, I had to come up with something in mind that I had to do. And I hope this will inspire somebody. I played football at Jackson State, went in '85, and I came out, graduated in '90. And I had to stop playing football my last year because I really wanted to graduate and get out. But I had to put some things in mind. First thing I want to try to inspire you with, when you think about pods, you think about the storage container that they put in front of your house. And that's when you're moving out or getting some renovation done, you move everything inside of that big steel box. And what I thought, I took PODS and used that acronym. P is for preparation. You ought to be prepared before you even leave your house going to deal with your different disciplines, your school, your children, your job, whatever you have to do. So P stands for preparation. Preparation don't start when you make it to your place of employment. Preparation starts before you even get up, start getting dressed. Then when I think about preparation, you got to be prepared for things that's going to happen, things that's not going to happen, incidentals or whatever it may be. Then when you look at P, then the letter comes up as O. I love a person who is organized. You need to have some organization skills. Amen. You got a secretary, you got everything ought to be in line for you to handle your business, to do what you need to do on a daily basis. You got to be organized. You want your children to be organized. The teacher, the professors, the CAOs, the directors, or whatever it may be, you need to be organized when you get to where you need to be. When you take the P, you get the O, and then you find D, you got to have some discipline. I think I was brought up under the most strictest person in the United States of America by the name of Dr. Jesse Sutton Jr. And I had to be so disciplined now because when I get instructions from him, now I'm not able to receive any instructions. He's laid up in a hospital. Been there since July the 2nd with a massive stroke. And he hadn't been able to talk. And what I have to do now is I have to reflect back on what my mom and my dad instilled within me to inspire me to go ahead and be better than what I am now. So you got to be prepared, you got to be organized, and you got to have some discipline about yourself. You want your kids to have discipline, you need to be disciplined. My wife teaches at Sidewell, and one thing I told her that she's way better than I am in being a teacher and an instructor, a math person. She teaches from bell to bell. She don't know what a seat look like until she get home. So I thank God for her being inspired to have some preparation, organization, and some discipline. Now, when you put those three letters together and you put the S on it, it'll give you some Bobby Brown that everybody needs. You got to have some structure. You got to have some structure about everything that you're doing. So I want to inspire you today. Hey, all hope is not lost. We have many members, but one body. And it takes everybody working together as a team. I did an illustration, I got about 30 seconds. I did an illustration in one of my sermons at church, and it was dealing with teamwork. It takes teamwork to make the dream work. And I did an illustration about Jackson State, Sonic Boom of the South. And I did not know in my mind how that would inspire people. It has over 32,000 views of people who have seen that demonstration. I told them it's not about me, but it's being you. We are nothing but instruments. And if you're going to go to work every day, if you're going to do your job and you're going to be sad about it, or woulda, coulda, shoulda, you need to stay at the house. We need some folks who don't mind getting down, getting dirty, don't mind opening up your eyes, staying there after the bell is over, doing what you need to do. Your phone ought to never stop ringing. So I want to inspire somebody in here today, to the board and to everybody, make the best sound decision you can make. Don't make it on your own personal view, but you know, in order to get somewhere, you got to learn something. And one of my quotes, when I graduated from Forest Hill High School in 1985, it was, you cannot steal second base with your foot still on first base. So it takes, guess what, y'all? It takes some trial, it takes some error. Everybody gonna make mistakes. My time up, I feel some coming. Is my time up? You call me? I want to inspire you to do the best that you can do. Maybe we didn't get the grade that we wanted to have. But one thing you got to remember in your mind, all hope is not lost. I remember one thing, and I'm going to go to my seat while I'm talking. I remember one thing, should have gave more than 2 minutes. When I got ready to get hired back at Jackson Public School after I got through teaching at Wingfield, and I remember my interview, they asked me a question. They said, what is going to take place if you don't get hired? Matter of fact, I said, you might not have me back, but you cannot take the love that I have for children that's in my heart. And so what we have to do, we have to take that same love that we apply in our own homes and apply it with somebody else. But remember this one thing, it takes a village to raise a child. We don't have many N.Z. Bryants anymore. We don't have a lot of Napoleon Gentry's anymore. So what we have to do is, we have to take what we have and use it to our best ability. So if you're saying that you're in this thing and you don't want to work, I'm suggesting you pack up and go home. Because I say what I gotta say, because I got about 26 years in this thing. I ain't gonna have to say yes about too much longer. But I hope I inspire somebody. You can do what you want to do, but you gotta put your mind to it. Faith, and I say that, without works,
It's dead.
it's dead.
Yes.
Anybody been inspired?
Yes. Reverend Sutton, if you'd hold on, we have a token of appreciation, and I believe this audience was inspired. I know I was. We greatly appreciate you.
I told Dr. Lockett I was trying to get a promotion. He told me to wait on me.
We want to take a picture.
Nice to meet you. Bless your heart. Bless you. I ain't going no further than that. I want all y'all on my picture. I want everybody on my picture. I might not get a chance to get down. I know y'all want,
Oh, you smells real. Okay.
I'll hold it back. I'm gonna pick it back up. I just want to be sure. Pink on me. Put some color in this place. I got red too. Bless you. Bless you. Bless you.
We asked for inspiration, and I believe we unanimously got inspired. Thank you so much, Reverend Sutton. We're going to remember that pod. Okay, very good. Now we're going to move on the agenda, establishment of a quorum. I believe we have one of our colleagues, Mr. Jet Oppenheim, via phone. Is that correct, Mr. Oppenheim?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here. And if everybody could speak into the microphones, it's a little bit hard to hear, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Even though he is on the phone, that is actually present for school board matters. Thank you. All right. We will now move along for adoption of our agenda.
So move.
Second.
All right. It's been moved by Mr. Ricky Jones and a second by Mrs. Johnson. We're ready to vote. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous adoption of agenda. Reading and approval of minutes from August 8th. Can we get an approval for the August 8th? I'm sorry. Were we supposed to do? I'm just moving right along. Are we in? Okay. Okay. The reading and approval of the August 8th minutes. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Mrs. Johnson, second by Mr. Jones. Ready to vote? All in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Oppenheim. All right, now we are down to public participation, general comments, and our proposed policy issues. Mrs. Turner, Do we have any public comment this evening?
Board members, you do, and I'm pretty sure that at least one of these, if not both of these, might need to be people who address you in executive session.
Okay.
One of them is you have a request from, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Kendall Ball. She would like to address you in regard to a matter doing with her student who's a child in the district. If you wouldn't mind, I'm going to ask that the board listen to you in executive session, since that's dealing with an individual student. The second person who is asked to address you this evening is Nakia Harper, and I'm not sure that this may not be a personnel matter. It is signed as waiver request for hire prospective librarian. Is this an individual personal employment situation? Then Mr. Harper and board members, I'd ask that you also take that one up in executive session.
Okay. All right. And the way that works is executive session will occur at the end of our meeting. So then we'll take those two issues up then. Thank you. All right. Now we're down to review for discipline cases. Are there any discipline cases?
We have no discipline cases for review.
Thank you, Dr. Murray. Dr. Murray, now it's superintendent's reports and announcements.
Good evening, board members, community. At this time, we're going to ask Dr. Merritt to come forward and give our CAP review. As you all know, we're still awaiting the results of the investigative audit. We should receive those results by the 31st of August. And so at this point, we're still continuing to work on our CAP, and Dr. Merritt will provide an update on where we are.
Yes, good afternoon to Dr. Murray, Ms. Sims, and board and audience. My update will be brief as it relates to the CAP. We have crossed the 90% completion rate, and I will have those accurate updates at the next board meeting for you, or I'll share the spreadsheet with Dr. Murray so he can forward it to you. Some things that are pretty much outstanding are, one, we're completing the data manual. Two, we're working on, as it relates to the processes with cumulative records, the implementation and the correction of that is taking place now. So some things we were working towards, and Dr. Sargent and his department were working very hard to clean up, but the completion of that process is ongoing. We're very proud to announce that we have a compliance monitoring team that consists of 4 individuals. They will be the quality control team to ensure that the implementation, and that's one of the things that was discussed as it relates to our implementation. Well, those individuals will go to schools monthly, making sure that standards are appropriately implemented. Those that require if there's a standard that requires a special skill to do, for example, exceptional ed, those standard leaders will continue to monitor that. Again, we were able to put together a document that houses all of the monitoring instruments. All principals have them. At this time, they have developed a compliance monitoring team within their buildings, and they have started monitoring individual standards within their building. They will complete the self-analysis on the 31st of August. We have developed a system where they can upload this information online. It will come to me, and I share with the assistant superintendents and Dr. Murray, and we'll know where we need to really support. But upon the findings coming back from the audit, I do feel comfortable that we're in a good place, as Dr. Murray will tell you, and that we're starting off right, we're doing the right work, and so some things they may have found, I'm sure we have self-corrected already as it relates to the way we have started the monitoring process this year.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, excuse me. How you doing? Thank you for the work you're doing, Mr. Murray and everybody. When you say 90% complete or 90% moving through, and we're waiting on documentation or this instrument to show where we are, where are we in that area as it relates since school started? In that area where the content, the standard 20, how has that progressed? I know that there were still some areas that was lacking. So where are we in that process?
Yes, sir. So as it relates, and I want to be clear, in Standard 20, we have 100% complete. We address pretty much every standard has been addressed. Now it's with the implementation stage. So as it relates to Standard 20, you all approved the instructional management system at the last board meeting. And so the curriculum, since school has started, has been implemented. The monitoring instruments as it relates to how the assistant superintendents, the document, a protocol that states how they will monitor Standard 20. All of that is in place. It's been reviewed. We have attestations as relates to from the teachers as required in the CAP that they have received their appropriate documentation and that the appropriate training has taken place.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And you mentioned the curriculum. I know that there were some moves to ensure a new, I guess, delivery process with creation of or re-implementation of the curriculum department. So as it relates to that, were there any additional pieces in there that the teachers had to overcome, or have they kind of gotten their pacing guides and all those types of things in place?
Yes, sir. Mr. Brown and his department provided training at the beginning of the year. All of the curriculum documents are online as required, as well as principals did, as I'm aware, make sure that they have a hard copy of the appropriate documents as well. So as it relates to all of the curriculum resources that are available, our teachers have them. Not only teachers, our limited service teachers have them as well.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
And thank you, Dr. Merritt. We transitioned, to Dr. Merritt is leading that work now, of course, with the support of the entire team, and he's done an excellent job in taking that over. And Dr. Sargent did an excellent job, and when it transitioned to Dr. Merritt, he's doing a great job. So we appreciate Dr. Merritt for his work in that area. Okay, continuing, just an update on registration. Currently, we have 25,135 students that have either completed registration or in the process of completing registration, meaning we have about 24,400 that have completed and about 679 that are actually in the process. They received a SNAP code and they're working through that process. The last update, we had about 19,000. So we are moving forward very aggressively and trying to make sure that all of our students are registered. We'll be sending, we've already sent home a correspondence outlining what will happen if students are not registered. By statute, we have to make sure that our students are registered. There are immunization issues that are tied to students being in school. And so we have to be able to document that to have students. So at some point, students who are not registered, they will not be able to attend school. So at this point, I think the 31st is that deadline. So we're encouraging parents, if you've not completed registration, you need to do so, because after the 31st, those students who are not registered will not be able to attend school. Okay. Until they've completed registration. Yes, August 31st, yes.
Okay. Man.
Yeah, thank you for that update, Dr. Murray. I've continued to hear issues about registration issues, both in terms of affidavit issues, where even with the affidavit, students either couldn't get into the school, or even once at the school, when they were told to go to school, having to sit in like the cafeteria or the auditorium or whatever. My suggestion, I think we need to do a full review of how we do registration, potentially convening some parents, some principals or whatnot, so that we're better prepared for the upcoming school year. And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if that looks like a task force from the community committee of the board or whatnot, but I know we're working really hard on registration, but I feel like a lot kind of fell through the cracks this year. So that would be my recommendation, and I don't know how my colleagues feel about that. But yeah, that's what I got.
Well, we'll address that. We've already started. Dr. Sargent and I have talked about the pre-registration process that was recommended at our last board meeting. So as a part of that discussion and researching that, the possibility of doing that, we'll definitely look at some of the gaps that existed. But I just would like to say to Dr. Sargent's office that that they have all affidavits are done at central office. And so if a parent if a parent reports to a school, we want that to be communicated to the public that well, that process was taking place. Now they can come at any time. There were, for obvious reasons, we had to have appointments because we had over 4,000 individuals that came to central office to complete affidavits, homeless registration in different areas, over 4,000 here at central office. So we definitely have been working diligently to make sure that we support all of those individuals that needed that support through affidavit, through McKinney-Vento, just whatever process that was necessary, we did that here at central office. So we're not perfect, so we definitely will look at that process, and if we can refine it and do better next year, we'll discuss that as we're looking at the pre-registration possibility.
The question I have.
And that's great. That's great. I appreciate that explanation. I just do hope that we can bring in folks from the community as well to provide some feedback and some input on that. So I appreciate the work on that and getting ahead of the ball.
Thank you, Mr. Oppenheim. Mr. Jones.
Thank you so much, Madam President. The question I have as it relates to the registration piece, how are we reaching out to these parents of students that were enrolled last year that we know perhaps may be there? Are we doing how are we reaching out to those individuals that haven't registered yet? And then part of that piece is, how does this fall into play with truancy or attendance? Do we have the truancy officer or the attendance people making phone calls, or what is that plan as it relates to that, or doing checking houses, or what do we?
Yes, sir. Well, we actually, Dr. Sargent, can you come up? Dr. Sargent, the team actually went out last week and conducted kind of an exercise to kind of help us determine actually how many students were not registered, so we could look at doing some creative things. So he can speak to what that office is doing and how we're trying to reach those students that have not yet registered. So.
Good evening. The students that have not completed registration fall in one of three categories. Either they're a no-show, which means they have not physically reported to the school at all. We hadn't heard from them as far as transferring, so if those students have to be addressed in a certain way. The other group that we have are those students that have communicated that they've transferred, which means they've come up to the school and they've withdrawn to go to other schools in the state of Mississippi or out of state. And then we have those students that have shown up for school, but the parents just hadn't completed registration. That number is very small. We only have that very scattered throughout the district, where we have students that are attending school and the parents just hadn't completed registration. Going back to that first group of students that are no-shows, we have to identify their last known whereabouts, and we have people in our schools that are reaching out, making those phone calls to find out where those students are. And so if we're not able to find them, eventually they are coded as dropouts because we just can't locate them. Then that other population that I talked about, the kids that have withdrawn, we still have to follow up with those kids. Now, the kids that have withdrawn and said that they were going out of state, that the T code that we use for that covers those students. But the kids that have transferred within the state to other districts in the state, we have to call those districts to make sure that those students have gone to those schools or to those schools' districts. Once we find that they're there, we have to make sure that they are released. Because if they're not released off our database, then we're still accountable for those kids' attendance. And so the attendance counselors that are in the building are currently working on that process as well.
Okay. What do you project our attendance to be or enrollment to be at based on this information?
Well, we currently in our system, we have 27,707 students. So as of today, that's what we're expecting. Okay. So until we go through this process, we are 100 and, well, we're 25, we have 25,135. And so you subtract that, about 2,000 students, 3,000 students, 3,159 is what we're still trying to find. And so those three, they fall into those three categories. So as of right now, we're expecting the 27,000. But as we go through this process, you know, that number may go down. but as of right now, 27,700.
Okay. And final question. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. The final question: how will or what preparations are you will you make as it relates to those 2,000 students coming in? You know, basically at the fourth or the fifth week of school. How will that impact your classroom?
Well, that's always the challenge, Mr. Jones. But we are, again, our goal is to bring those students into the fold and put them into classes. Again, when we do mass scheduling, though many of those students we've already considered those numbers in many cases. For example, at a school like Amura, they may have 1,500 students on roll, and there are only 1,300 present. So they've accounted for those students. So in doing their scheduling, those students have been accounted for. You know, just in many cases that they won't all show up. So we've already done some work in accounting for those students and made provisions for their arrival. But again, that's why we need all students in school, because we can't afford to miss one day. Mm-hmm. So, you know, now we're into almost week 3. So we encourage parents to get students registered.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question about Group 3. Do we have a number on Group 3? Did I miss that?
No, I didn't provide, but I can send it to Dr. Murray and he can share it with you.
And what are those students doing when they're at school?
They're engaged in the instructional process. To my knowledge, probably a more appropriate question for the assistant soups.
Okay. Well, the expectation is that all students that are in school are receiving the instruction. We just have to, we're not isolating those students. Those students, in many cases, for example, we have some students that have different color schedules. They're going to class, but they may have a pink schedule that denotes that they've not completed registration. So they should not be treated any differently. But again, at some point, we have to stop, because there are a lot of different variables, you know, feeding, you know, there are a lot of things that go into completing registration. Most importantly, like immunization, that becomes a safety issue. If we have students who've not completed registration, we don't know their status. So again, we have to draw a line at some point, and we've done that. And we've communicated that to our parents, and on a daily basis, we're communicating that to those students who need to complete registration.
Dr. Murray, let me ask you a question. Is this number higher than it normally is, and do you attribute it due to the affidavits or the process this year being different?
The number of students that haven't shown up?
That have not shown up, or parents have not completed the registration?
It's much higher this year.
Much higher.
Mm-hmm.
And we attribute that, we talked about that, we attribute that to better record keeping as well.
Okay.
Right.
We have a very good process in place. As you all know, you approved a team, and they are doing a yeoman's job in the building on making sure that we know that the numbers are accurate. So better record keeping may be the cause of that, as opposed to students just not showing up.
Okay.
If I may, Madam
Go ahead,
President.
Mr. Jones.
I have a question. Since we move or change the location where the students can have to come register, typically it was at the school, right?
Traditional registration still occurs at the school. The only registration that takes place at central office are special circumstances. Students, parents that need shared residency affidavit, students that are in foster care, non-parental affidavit, which means the child is living with somebody other than the parent, and also homeless parents.
Okay.
We handle those here, but all other traditional registration is handled at the school.
Okay. And in that, how much of from the parent's perspective, or from the guardian or person that's looking out to that child or that student, how much of that is due to extenuating circumstances such as transportation issues? Has that been brought up in perhaps some of the reasons why there's this kind of kickback or additional questioning about why we're having to do this and so on? Has that been any issues?
When the parents come to me and we talk about the registration process, when I explain to them why and the importance of the record keeping, most of them are satisfied with that answer.
Okay.
We have had parents who contact the schools and said they have issues with transportation. In those situations, I've personally gone out to register those kids either at the school, and we'll go as far as going to their homes.
Okay.
And so we have made accommodations for those parents that may have transportation issues.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay. And the last thing that we have, well, one other thing, we'd like to report that we've submitted our school improvement grant, the SIG grant. It was in yesterday. and the deadline is tomorrow. So we look forward to getting some feedback from that. But it is submitted. We have confirmation.
Good deal.
On that. Okay. And the last thing on the report, if we could pull up data, you all have seen some data in the news lately. Last week, a media file was released relative to map data. And so we wanted to just kind of have that data make some sense to you as it relates to what we have here in the district. Again, this is preliminary data, and some of it will change because the data has not been thoroughly cleaned. But this is what has been submitted, what you've seen in the paper and many of the media outlets, and we just want to provide you a snapshot of where we are. If you look at this, this is our math comparison. And if from a statistical standpoint, if you look at the blue line is last year. The red line is this year. Well, 15-16 is the blue line, 16-17. And when you look at data, when you analyze data, you want to see improvement, trends where the trajectory is higher. And you can clearly see that in the area of math. We improved in virtually every category with the exception of Algebra 1. And again, this is with preliminary data that still has to be cleaned some. It's my understanding that the retester data is still in this assessment, and that will come out, and so we hopefully that 4.7 will improve. But if you look at the data at the top, it's an even better visual. You can see the difference between last year and this year. The green denotes improvement, the yellow virtually no change, and that's supposed to be red where we had a decrease. And so those are the kind of color schemes that you would like to see with data. So that's an area of math. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Based on that area where the Algebra 1 is, and it's down to 3.2, what, based on your assessments or review of this area, what do you attribute to what's causing this?
Well, one thing is teachers. One thing is teacher shortage, and specifically in math. We have 39, currently we have 39 math vacancies. Well, this is still 39, Ms.
Okay.
39 math vacancies. Okay. We've done some very creative things. That's one area. Okay. But also, the rigor is changed, and so it's training our teachers that are actually in the building, because it's not the math. When we were in school, it's a different level of rigor, and so just as we teach students, we have teachers have to teach a different way. I had a teacher just this morning, a retiree that's math certified, taught for years, has come back and said, "Look, I need to go through some training because this is a different kind of way of teaching. What's required now." So the training of the teachers and also the certification in the area of math.
Okay. The other question I have there too as a follow-up, I noticed that there's, like you said, being creative. How many of your administrative staff, people that's in these other departments, have math certification?
Some, I know,
they're not in, and pardon me if I may cut you off, they perhaps may not be in the classroom, but maybe working in some other capacity within the district.
We have some, I'd have to pull that together, but I know some of the individuals in this room, several have math certifications, okay. But are you referring to lead teachers, executive directors?
Executive directors, those that are perhaps are sitting in another position that are not specifically in the classroom?
Well, we have everyone that is at most of our staff that are certified staff have a certification.
Okay,
and
great.
So many probably, I don't have the exact numbers, but I'm sure there's a variety of our staff that have math certifications.
Okay, how can we creatively address changing up there, not get into personnel, but asking a question here, deploy them into those classrooms where that one math class is not, until we get teachers in place to get them actually instructing that math class on a weekly or monthly basis, or until we get up to speed?
Okay, well, we've not looked at that as an option, but again, we feel a better model is providing support. Again, these math individuals that are at the executive level are in buildings. We're not sitting in offices in a silo. We are out in buildings providing support. So those math individuals that are in curriculum, they're out modeling in classrooms. If we talk, like, for example, lead teachers, the executive directors of school improvement, the assistant superintendents are out in buildings providing support to principals so that they can support teachers. But,
Okay.
but your specific question, we've not looked at that as an option.
Okay.
We've not at this point.
Okay, because looking at that, at those math scores up there, and our children or the students are not being in front of a teacher and see what at Algebra 1, which is the first level of algebra, and they're having to get prepared and prep, go to Algebra 2, we have to, that's a critical,
Yes, sir.
critical
Well,
space and
yes, sir.
concern
And-
in terms of projecting forward, you know.
Yes, sir. Well, we have a very clear strategic plan for dealing with algebra this year. Yeah, very, and we'll be bringing some things back to you all actually at the next board meeting to talk about how we plan to specifically address the dip in this area. But we do want to applaud the success. You know, there has been in other areas across the board, we did see gains, and what that is, that gives you a good indication that those algebra scores will get better because the students that are coming to algebra are being better prepared. So again, again, that is the map comparison from last year, and when that data is been finalized, we'll bring that back to you. But we wanted you to have, we don't want individuals to be talking about us or, you know, without us bringing some, making some meaning of it. So that's the purpose of this.
So we be able to get a copy, hard copy of that?
Of this?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
We'll send that to you.
All
Okay,
right, thank you so much.
next slide, and the last one is the English, the ELA. Okay, if you look at the ELA, they are similar. 16-17 is the red line. 15-16 is the blue line. We had, if you look at that, we had some very good success in 5th grade and 6th grade. 7th grade, we kind of stayed level. We had a slight dip in 8th grade, and then in English 10. But again, in the English 10 area, be reminded that the retest data is still included in that, so that number will change at the high school. But again, this is a comparison of the data from 15-16 to 16-17. Across the board, we either improved or stayed level in 10 of the 14 categories, which is progress. So we, overall, our proficiency levels increased, which is the direction that we want to move in. And so again, at this time, we'll entertain any questions you might have about the data.
Mr. Jones.
Thank you so much. The question I have is, as it relates to those 8th grade, that 8th grade section there, and that large, what I see is decrease. So how are we getting in that middle space there, or what is your plan in that middle space to shore up, of course, improvements there? But what do you have you attribute that to, and how are you going to address it?
Well, all of it. Again, it goes back to not so much of teacher shortage in English, because I think we're good as it relates to those ELA classes. But I think again, the reading skills of our students, the literacy levels, that's a focus for us. We're working on making sure that all of our students, that our teachers are trained in literacy, so that they can do a better job in the classroom. We're teaching across the curriculum, making sure that reading and literacy is a focus in all of our areas. And so we think that those things will support. And we also have a plan as well for ELA, just like we do for math.
Okay. And I noticed there in that line, and I'm glad we got a graph such as this showing. We see where it come in 7th grade, but right there, 6th grade is pretty much on point. But then we see that trend where it's going down, right? So in that process, in that 2-year period there, what do we see, or what was recognized that perhaps that we're going to do differently from that period to this period? Because again, we're talking about now these 8th graders going into the 9th grade, you know, at that space there. So what help me to understand, you know, kind of give us some color to what did we see from over that 2-year period that still showed that trend was going down, since we were pretty much.
Well, I mean, again, there are different variables. There's not one specific reason why the data looks the way it does. That takes item analysis, a much more in-depth analysis of the data, and that's kind of what we're doing now. But again, improving the level of instruction, the rigor gets, as a student goes up, if you're having trouble reading as a 5th grader, you're really going to have trouble as an 8th grader. So going back to the literacy, making sure, because the content is becoming more complex as the grade level goes up, and so those things are magnified the higher you go in grade levels. And so again, we have to, our 3rd grade gate is an indicator that we're starting to do a better job with our students at the elementary level, and we'll begin to see those trends improve. Just note, 4th grade across the state, there were some dips. You've probably heard that in the media across the board. Across the state, everybody pretty much took a dip in 4th grade.
Okay, and I understand. I appreciate your comments there, but to say that the content has got a little bit more challenging, or even say that a child is coming from 1 grade to the next grade is not on level, that poses some other question that perhaps through a work session we can get into.
Yes, sir.
But also too, for me looking over here, there is some issues just as a layman that where the content is not being either unpacked in a way that is delivered to the student, or there are some areas in there that may have been a disconnect or something. But I do know that forecasting to the senior year and so on, looking at that where we have a downward trend, that is a situation that I hope, I'm glad to see you addressing. But I would definitely say that one of those inhibitors may not be because of the student, and one of those inhibitors may not be because of the content.
Well, no, that wasn't that. We didn't say that. We said that the question was, what did I think was, if I heard you correct,
yes,
what did I think was some of the issues? And I think it was the teachers teaching the content.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. All right.
All right.
Okay. But again, overall, there's progress. The data clearly shows that we have a ways to go. We have a lot of areas where we can improve in, but there are many areas. There are some bright spots as it relates to growth that's being made in the district. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Murray.
That completes my report.
All right, thank you, Dr. Murray. There are some bright spots, and I think we just got a report that we've got maybe 5 schools that have led, not only statewide, but
and School Digger, yes.
Digger, yes.
5 of our schools were what they call 5-star schools, which are the top schools in the state. Some of the top schools in the state.
Yes, yes. Okay, thank you so much. Now we're going to move on to our information items only. We have, then we'll move on to information items action. The first one would be approval of raise pay salaries for food service supervisors with Ms. Hill as Executive Director of Food Service. Thank you, Ms. Hill.
Murray, Ms. Sims. This evening, I'm requesting that you approve the pay scale for area supervisors in food service. The rationale behind that is so that I can be competitive with other industries out there. Presently, I have 2 vacancies. I've lost both of them to other companies who are paying them more. I have had that position posted for a while, and I have not been very successful in getting individuals that I feel will meet the needs of our department. I'm also looking for a registered dietitian, which I feel that we need in one of those 2 positions, simply because of our food service needs as it relates to our students. You would be very surprised how many students we have on special diets that we meet each and every day. So that is the request, that we move that salary scale so that we could be competitive with other industries in the city.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions?
I do have
Mr.
one.
Jones?
Thank you so much, and thank you, ma'am, for what you do, Ms. Hill, and have done. I see that there is of course, for your two areas, and we most definitely have to be competitive, and definitely the resident dietitian will increase, the students' ability to get the nutrition and as well as what they need. The other question I have, though, what does it look like for the other frontline workers, so your other workers, in terms of food service people? How would it look for them to look at a salary or increase or what have you for those frontline people? What would that look like?
Now, that is one of the goals that we have that we're working on this year. Funding is an issue. And of course, we have been looking because we have been just riddled with so many other things, large pieces of equipment, those kinds of things that we need to do. But
sure,
we are looking at that. I've already spoke with HR about looking at what some of those possibilities are, as well as with Ms. Miller, because that will then affect other areas as well. So it is certainly on the radar as we evaluate this school year and as we go through this school year.
Okay.
It is.
Okay, thank you. So with I guess I need to give Ms. Miller you on this, the annual payroll for food service in terms of our hourly, I guess we'll assume workers, and then what percentage, 3 to 5% or somewhere along in there. Can we get a number to kind of look at and kind of just mull over as you begin to work toward that?
Certainly.
Okay.
And right now, the conversation that we've had with HR has been that we were looking at how many steps we could afford, because it's by steps.
I understand.
So certainly we have been looking at, and now percentage-wise, they'll have to help me on what that percentage would be.
Okay.
But we've been looking at steps.
Okay.
And certainly we'll keep you updated, but that conversation has already started.
Okay, good deal. We appreciate you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Any more questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead,
Yeah, I
Mr.
have a question.
Alpine.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Hill, for coming forward. And I think, if I heard right, I think Ricky just asked the question I was first going to ask about getting everybody classified, not certified, et cetera, the living wages. So I'll put that aside. My question, I don't know if it's for Ms. Hill or if it's for Ms. Miller or even Dr. Murray. My question is, if we do this, are we setting a precedent for other departments and folks to come forward asking for, us to essentially put the salary scale aside with whatever their department is? And so that would cause me a little bit of a concern due to some unintended consequences of other folks saying, well, what about us? So I just wonder if we're setting ourselves up a little bit here on this particular issue.
Okay, I'll just make a brief comment, Mr. Oppenheim. This is Dr. Murray, and Ms. Miller can take it from there. But we've already done that. We did that with transportation, so that kind of that salary is out of line with all of our other classified positions. So we're going to have to take. I mean, it's clear. We hear it every single day. So we're going to have to take a look at all of our salaries. We did the transportation out of necessity, and we're not, we think that was the right thing to do. But that when you compare that salary for a classified position to what other classified, that has already started on a daily basis. So what we'll have to do, every week we have the conversation of how we can do better by our employees, but that means you have to, if we give a raise on one side, we have to cut somewhere else. So, the money is not increasing. So we have to look very strategically at how we do that. But that has already started, the comparison of from one department to the next.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, that was where some of that question was coming from. I know in the past, maybe a year or two ago, I think Ms. Miller may have run some numbers to see what it would take to get everybody up to living wage within the district. And I remember hearing the number and thinking, it's not a huge leap, and that it seems to be manageable when we think about some of our departments that could be reduced, elsewhere and whatnot. So I just would hope that we could really strongly consider how we're doing it and moving folks around, because I think it's possible with our budget and becoming more efficient with some of our departments. And then the other, and some of the question also comes from the concern of, for better or for worse, there's this myth that we have a heavy downtown administrative side. So I think we have to be really careful. I know these are positions that already existed that just haven't been filled, but we also have to be mindful of some unintended consequences of that in terms of perception around we're just making downtown, top heavy and whatnot. And so I'll hold the rest of my comments. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Oppenheim. All right. Any other questions?
I do have a question now.
Sure.
So that if I understand you correctly, there's no new money, so this is moving money from one place to another place.
Well, Ms. Miller could probably, from a financial standpoint, when I say for example, we got to cut we pay salaries out of district maintenance, and so that's being
the unique situation. Thank you, Dr. Murray, Ms. Sims, members of the board. The unique situation that Ms. Hill has is that she fully supports her operation. She receives no money from district maintenance and hasn't for probably 8 or 10 years now. And so she is able to support completely her budget and her salaries. That is one of the good things about having her federal dollars. They're not attached to MAEP, so there's no reduction in that from that standpoint. The thing that we have to be mindful of, though, is that we make a one-time cut to get to where we have to go, but the other thing is it's an ongoing expense. So you can cut 1 year to do a raise, but if you still keep the same number of people, you still have to continue monitoring that and figuring out how to budget for that. As Dr. Murray said, our numbers are not increasing. The registration numbers I'm watching with keen interest, because you are aware that is the first line of the MAEP funding, is how many students we have in the district. And so we need students, we need them in the buildings, we need them in the classrooms, so that we won't see a significant reduction, at least on our part, of what we can do to affect the budget. But of course, we look all the time at where to streamline and where we can streamline. This is probably one of the most lean budgets that I have seen on the district maintenance side. Of course, we have concerns everywhere. We still have needs, we won't even talk about building needs and infrastructure, but we have a lot of that has to be supported by district maintenance. So as Dr. Murray said, we are inundated every day about departments that are losing people. My department's lost 3 that we can't compete. And it's disheartening, but we are committed to making sure that in the upcoming year that we dedicate some funds to ensure that we can do something for our classified staff, as well as our administrators.
And if I could, Ms. Miller, if you could if we could go back to the administrative costs, if you could do that speak to that as it relates to how we spend from an administrative standpoint for the public, so we could understand that.
Right, and so I think what part of it becomes important for us to know that when we start talking about administrative costs as a whole, it's a much smaller percentage of than what we're spending on instructional expenditures and salaries and fringe benefits. Again, I think because the numbers, people see that they are 4 or 5 of this or 3 of this, and that's a larger part. But I've shown you, especially in the audit and in other documents, that it's clear that we're spending our money in instruction. We had that conversation with the city council on Monday, to let them to show them that those dollars that we're spending are going directly to the classrooms. So I think it is Mr. Oppenheim mentioned perception, and I think that is a lot of it. But of course, we are desperately concerned about making sure that we are taking care of the people that are putting in the work every single solitary day.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Jones, you have a question?
This last piece. And I appreciate the explanation. I definitely, hear rave reviews all over the country about how Ms. Hill is running a very stellar and model shop. However, too, we have to make sure that as we look at supplementing her operation from whichever area, as we look back over this past year alone, we have
brought in several positions for individuals. And so when we start looking at that, we have to make sure that we start looking at our classified individuals in the same capacity.
Absolutely.
Because as we look at these frontline individuals, they're the ones that really make the ship move. And as we look at, again, these other positions that is noted already, then we have to make sure that we are supporting our operations that put quality meals into our children's stomachs every day.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Miller, would you give us an insight as you were talking about our administrative staff? Do you know what percentage of our total budget goes into the administrative type salaries? Can you give us an idea at what percentage that would be versus the overall? Can you just give us an idea,
I think I can
please?
tell you the other way because I made
Okay.
a point of making that with the city council. Over 48% of our budget is committed to instruction, direct instruction. Now, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head as far as salaries are concerned, but when you look at what's spent directly in schools, and we have them by categories, so function 1,000, which is instruction, and those direct instructions is dollars, that's where we are. And if you recall, a couple of months ago, we talked about the fact that the reports that come out look at, in the audit reports, they look at just instruction, but they don't look at the other part that it takes to run a school, a counselor, a principal, an assistant principal. So those are the expenses that are also added into our budget. And when you look at that as a whole over our entire budget, including our federal dollars, we consistently spend over 60% of our budget, total district budget, on instruction. So the general administration numbers are significantly smaller than what I think people think it is. But I can certainly have those numbers. It's in the audit report, and I can certainly, that's not my numbers, that's independent.
Okay, maybe next board meeting, if you could just bring that forward as an information item only, that's just that we would know that.
Sure.
Thank you for this insight. Ms. Hill, you have...
Can I say just one more question?
Sure.
Make one more statement. I just want to be sure that we understand this is replacement of staff, and they do a lot because they have roughly about 20 schools apiece. So presently, being two down, the operation is still going, but they have many other tasks that they do. So it's well worth the additional amount in order to get quality people to run our programs.
Thank you so much. All right, there's no more questions. Colleagues, I think we're ready to vote. May I hear a motion, please?
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Oppenheimer, we'll let him move, and Mr. Jones will be the second. All right, if that is the case, now we're ready to vote. If you all in favor,
Aye.
please raise your hand. We have a unanimous vote there. Thank you so much. Now we're moving on to consent agenda items. Ms. Miller is already there at the podium.
Thank you, Ms. Sims.
Go
again.
ahead.
Dr. Murray. Board members, I present to you consent agenda items. Finance A, approval of disbursements, activity funds, and accounts payable for July 29th through August 11th. Approval of various budgets for 2017, 2018, and approval of the formal bid. We did have one bid this time. It's the online professional learning video content provider and video management system, which is for our professional development department and how they will deliver content and professional development opportunities for our teachers and our other staff members.
All right, Ms. Miller, with that, so do we need to vote on that bid at this point?
Yes, ma'am. If you
Okay.
may take them all together or
Okay.
separately.
We have, first, let's see if there's any questions on A, B, and C. Any questions on any of those items?
Yeah, I
Mr.
do,
Jones?
please. As it relates to the disbursement of accounts payable,
Yes, sir.
I saw in there where we have an agreement with one copier company, Canon, and then there's another contract with another company. I think is Advantage or something.
Yes, sir.
What's why are there
difference.
two separate?
The Canon copier contract is for the copiers that are in the schools in all the district. Advanced supports our graphic arts departments. So they have a number of heavier machines, heavier copiers that do 90% of the print work that you see in the district that goes on. And so those machines are covered by that contract.
Okay. How is that beneficial to us to have two separate
Well,
turns of
because
machines?
because of the type of machinery that's needed, Canon doesn't necessarily give us that type of machinery, and also these are long-term contracts. This is a long-term contract agreement with the ones in graphic arts.
Okay.
We'll be looking at trying to upgrade some graphic arts equipment.
Okay. I'm glad you mentioned that. The other question I have too, that's in the same lines of the accounts payable, is I see there was a business systems for scanning.
Yes, sir.
And I think that's on page, well, I guess in mine it says 13, but I don't know which. It's
yeah,
you familiar?
Yes, sir.
Okay. With the contract with Canon, did it not provide a scanning machine where we have to outsource scanning folders?
This is the scanning of records, student records for Dr. Sargent's office and assessment. So all of the transcripts and documents related to student records are scanned by a different company. They're indexed. It's a much more robust system than what Canon does. We all use our scanners and scan information to our hard drives, but this information and that company provides a mechanism by which if Dr. Sargent's staff needs to go back and look, it's indexed. They can pull those records down. So it's much more robust than just the scanning opportunities that Canon provides to us.
Okay, and that even begs a deeper question I have. So in terms of that workflow, how or what is the process then that we're able to look at our agreements with Canon or this other company to come up with a more efficient format that will give us those capabilities in-house?
In-house?
Yes, you know, when a form come in, you know, you can put it on the thing and it scan it right in, right into those. Okay.
Personnel.
All right. Thank you for that. And you've answered mine.
Okay, that is question, Mrs. Johnson. Do you have any questions?
I don't.
Mr. Oppenheim, do you have any questions?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Jones.
Yeah, and the last one will be on the formal bid
Yes,
for personnel or for professional development.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What was the observations through professional development to say this type of program would fit our needs? What was the scope or what background on this?
What we're seeing, if you recall, this is the first year that we've had professional development department in some time. What we saw when teachers were leaving and doing their exit surveys is that they didn't feel like they were getting enough professional development. Because the staff is a staff of 3, it's much easier than for applicants and teachers to be able to access their professional development once that's been tailored for their needs from their computers at their schools. It helps that, of course, they'll do some on-site training, but we can reach much more folks by being able to offer this video content. Teachers and classified folks can take these lessons at their leisure. So it gives us an opportunity to make sure that people are being trained and have the opportunity to be trained. We have very limited days in the calendar in which you can pull mass numbers of folks out of the buildings. And so this provides an opportunity for everyone to get the training that they need. The district has a policy that classified staff has to have 20 hours of professional development each year, and certified, of course, have to keep their licensures up. And so one of the things that we saw, especially with classified, is that it's very, very difficult to have, professional development that's related to some of the things that we do. So it was making department directors were having to be real creative and giving opportunities for folks to get training. We don't have a lot of times where we send folks off a lot of times especially if they don't have access to title funding. So this, we saw this as best practices in a lot of other school districts that, again, a way to not have a whole lot of personnel, again, as we talk downtown, to do training, but this gives us an opportunity to give a full catalog of lessons and opportunities for teachers and staff to get professional development.
And Mr. Jones, if I could add also, it provides that that immediate feedback. If a principal goes into a math class, there's an area where the principal sees a need for support, he or she could immediately refer that teacher to that support. And so that immediate real-time feedback, as opposed to having to wait for a training, send that teacher off to a specific training, it's right there readily available. So we think it adds that another layer of support.
One of the things that we're adding to our applicant process that we have, that we will be upgrading our software, is that applicants, especially teacher applicants, will be taking a kind of pre-test type of activity. They'll be answering certain questions. So as principals start to interview these teachers, they can see automatically from the application point what kind of professional development they need to guide them to. So we're trying to do this wraparound that, we get these novice teachers in, and we want to immediately be able to identify professional development and then point them directly to the information to get, so they can get this support that they need.
So with that said, will this opportunity here enable the new 1 to 3 year teachers to also be in the training that MDE puts on for novice or new teachers too? Will this supplement that as well?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, good deal.
Thank you. I thought through this and had a couple of conversations, and professional development is something that we definitely need to increase our delivery to our students and Mr. Jones, so we can get our scores, our proficiency rates up. And it seems to me that if a teacher has an area that they need to be strengthened, they can immediately go to this delivery system, database, pull the information, and then start teaching.
And they don't have to wait on someone to tell them. It'll be out there, and if they see that they have a weakness, they can actually go out and do it themselves, and they see, maybe get help before the principal or anybody else identifies it.
Okay, and my last question, Ms. Miller, maybe Dr. Murray, is have you been able to see other school districts that have used this type of delivery system for the professional development? Has it made a difference in the academic achievements of their students?
Oh, yes. Again, we've done extensive research and talked with multiple vendors who do this kind of work. And again, we've been saying it all along, we have to improve our teacher corps. And this, we know this will be a positive move in that direction.
All right. Thank you. All right. There's no other questions, and we'll take A, B, and C for approval. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Ms. Johnson?
Second.
All right. Ms. Johnson, motion, and Mr. Jones, second. All right, we ready to vote? May I get a,
Aye.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That would be unanimous. Now we move forward to consent agenda items general. Are there any that you all would like to pull before we?
Yes.
Which items?
I have a few.
Which items, Mr. Oppenheim?
Item A as in apple, item C as in cat, item B as in boy, and item F as in F.
Okay, so I hear item A, was it B as in boy, C, and F?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, does anybody else need another item pulled?
G.
G. All right. With that said, what I'd like to do is go ahead and vote on the others, then we'll open them up for discussion as we go down the list. So we'll be voting on item B. I'm sorry. It would be D as in David, E as in Edward, H as in Harry, and I as in ice. Can I get a motion for the floor, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Jones, motion, Mrs. Johnson, second. Okay, we're voting.
I do have a question just about one of those items real quick.
Which one?
Item I. I just wanted to know if there'll be a heavy focus on literacy. I know we got the item saying there'll be the science focus, but I want to make sure that since this is early years, that we have a heavy literacy and math focus in there as well.
The focus, again, the proposal is for the focus on on science, I'm sorry, through a collaboration with the Museum of Science. We will definitely make sure that literacy is a part of that because, of course, the science test will be changing and students will need to be literate. So, but again, the focus will be primarily on science. As you know, the period of time will be short in the afternoon, and so that's an area of concentration for science. So, but we will make sure that we put components of literacy there.
Okay. All right. And there's the Century 21 is geared toward what grade levels?
Well, 21st Century is for this specific these grants that we're writing. It will be elementary. And what we found, we looked at focus schools, those schools that from the state provides a list of focus schools. We pull these schools from the focus list, and we just feel like we've tried and tested this before with high school and middle school, and we just feel like elementary for us will be a better model. The participation we think will increase, and again the focus on preparing our students for science, which is an area that does not, and many times, get a lot of attention at the elementary level because of the focus on ELA and math. So we felt like this was the best approach to take, and we'll be partnering again with the Museum of Science to bring a different level of rigor to the table for that.
I think the exposure will be good.
I have a follow-up question.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Are they high priority because of science, or are they high priority because of ELA and math?
They're focus schools, and it's because of course the ELA and math. But again, the focus for us after looking at this as a team, the decision was made to go with science. As we mentioned before, literacy is a part of everything, and so we will have some literacy as a part of that just through through the nature of the work. But again, we felt as an administrative team and through collaboration that we wanted to focus this on science, and we felt that this would be the best approach to take to this specific grant.
So on this specific one, so does that mean there's other ones coming in front of us? Because my questions are, obviously, I don't think we become kind of high priority or in deficits because of science per se, so I don't want this to be a missed opportunity to focus on the things that we're kind of being held accountable for in a much greater manner.
Well, I agree. I think when we think about science in isolation, then I understand what you're saying, but we're not speaking of science in isolation. There'll be opportunities to infuse, from a science standpoint, and having a collaboration with the Museum of Science, there's all kinds of opportunities to bring engaging and compelling and satisfying work to the table, as opposed to worksheets and sit and get math and English and not having that ability to engage students. So I understand the concern about the approach to science, but we will work very deliberately in making sure that the opportunities to infuse math and literacy into the science. But again, the decision was made to have a focus on science with this partnership. But of course, we know that 100% goes to ELA, 100% goes to math, only 50% goes to science. So we're aware of that, but again, we felt like this was the most appropriate approach for this specific set of grants.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. If that is all the questions, now we're ready to vote. All in favor of D, E, H, and I, please signify by raising your hand.
Aye.
Okay, that would be a unanimous vote. Now we're going to go into item A. Any questions that you may have for Chief Jones on the emergency school emergency management plan?
Yeah.
What questions?
Yeah.
Mr. Oppenheim?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Sims and Chief Jones, for coming forward on this. I do have some questions. You know, I know that this is the second year in a row about the whole technology and it doesn't come out looking right. My question on my own computer, so I apologize for raising that again, that it's looking like it was out of order. My question is still, it looks like there's a lot of pieces that are repeated, and that the information where it's repeated in terms of potential threats looks slightly different in each area. And so I'm wondering if you could address that.
Yes, sir, I'll try to. I could not see the duplication that you mentioned or that you talked about. As I looked at the different threats, the responses may seem similar, but because of the nature of the threats, they are different. Not only the response, but the actions taken by the individuals as it relates to the threat itself.
Okay, well, I will make sure to point that out again. Kind of building on that, how is this document trained for staff? How do staff get trained on this? Because it's a lot of information with very specific types of threats and whatnot.
Yes, sir. Each school has a school crisis response plan. The principals or the building administrators are responsible for training their staff members on that particular plan. We also offer training through my department that's posted on the website for all district employees so that they can receive the same information in a similar fashion.
So the communication team is trained, the administrative teams are trained on their very specific pieces of this?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question. Would you repeat it, please?
The communication PR team or whatever are trained on how to notify the community, how to notify various officials in the community. The parents are trained. I saw that the PTSAs are in here as playing a function. So I'm just wondering when and how they get trained on this.
Yes, sir. The school's crisis response plan does include that component in terms of the call down tier or tree to make notification to the community at large and our parents and stakeholders. We work with Mr. Johnson's office in getting that information out through our robocalls and other means. So that's how we communicate that to the public. Again, the building administrators work with their PTSAs in their building as it relates to the plan itself and the implementation of that plan if in fact they're in the building during these crises.
Thank you for that. And then my last question is more of a statement because I know I asked it beforehand and I was given a response about the United Way. What concerns me about them being in there is, one, they do not do counseling for homeless people. I work for them, so what it does is it makes me concerned about other resources that are identified in this document. So I would be worried if in some kind of a disaster or an emergency that somebody picks that up and says, I'm going to call the United Way, for an example, and they don't do homeless counseling, they don't do any kind of crisis management or emergency management at this point. So it just makes me concerned that some of the other stuff in there might not be up to date, and I would just hope that we could keep on taking a deeper review into this document. But that's all the comments, questions I have for right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oppenheim. Mr. Jones has a question on A.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Reading through the document, I see that there may be perceived as a piece there. In some points in there it says call 911. Other points in there it says call JPSD. So how does this, signify? Because to my understanding, that when a 911 call is sent out, okay, and Sheriff's Department, the JPD is coming over, they actually stop. And so how does this plan address those types of protocols when a emergency is already taking place? Because I'm seeing where, and the reason, and where the contradiction comes in that is the campus enforcement, their response is to call, what is that place over there, Bradley? The school, where they call whatever the dispatch is, and watch closed circuit TV. And then the principal is scheduled to call 911. And we have experienced incidents where, it's what if I'm understanding correctly. So I'm just trying to get clarity of kind of how all that works in a intense situation. If there's a, God forbid, an active shooter. Okay.
And I'll try to answer your question, Mr. Jones, where you posed it. If there's an active shooter situation, the call goes to 911, which is the City of Jackson's communications department. They immediately start to dispatch officers. They also contact our department so that there will be a unified response. In an active shooter situation, not only is our department contacted, but now there is a state mandate that other law enforcement agencies in the metro area are responding as well. So it's not going to be just JPD, it's going to be the Sheriff's Department, the Highway Patrol, Game and Fish Commission, any area law enforcement officers will be responding to that call. So that's handled through the JPD 911 dispatch center. They contact us, and then we immediately start working with the school itself. Our officers that are in the schools, we have communications with them so that they would know that there is a response and that there is an active situation. So it's not isolated, it's multi-tiered, it's happening at the same time.
Okay, and the reason, and I'm glad you pointed it out, but again, the question goes to, how does that principal makes that 911 call, and then all these other things have to happen, and at that point in my mind, there's time being wasted until response is given back to that principal or to that particular call, whatever the incident is or situation is, if we have to get back and respond to them, and so to me, it seems like it's a cumbersome situation that we need quick response to, because based on where it's written as I'm reading this in this plan.
I'm sorry, boss. The 911 response is not a callback. As soon as they make the call, the plan goes into effect immediately. The action starts immediately after the phone call. As a rule, the caller stays on the phone. So there's not a gap, if you would, between the call and the action. They stay on the phone so that we can get information in real-time fashion. It's one call, that's all. Once they make their call, everything goes into play after that. We start communication via another means, which is a radio, while they're on the phone with the 911 dispatcher. And we're also communicating with the responding officers in JPD and other agencies as well, because we now have that capability. So there is no gap.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. All right. Are there any other questions for Mr. Jones, for Chief Jones, for item A? All right, we're going to move on now and ask to get a vote for consent agenda item A. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, Ms. Oppenheim move and Mrs. Johnson second. All right, we ready to vote? All in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, we have 2 hands raised, mine and Mrs. Johnson. Mr. Jones is abstaining. Thank you. All right, we're moving now to item B. Mr. Jones, excuse me. While you're there, would you all, my colleagues, would you all mind if we would go ahead and look at item F while we have Chief Jones at the podium?
Sure.
Can we do that? Okay, we're going to look at item F. Are there any questions concerning item F? And this is approval of agreement between the City of Jackson, JPD, and the Jackson Public School District. Are any questions about that?
I didn't hear what you just explained. What are we doing?
Since Mr. Jones, Chief Jones is at the podium, we're looking at item F. It is approval of agreement between the City of Jackson, Jackson Police Department, and this JPS. So this is a working agreement with the police officers.
Yes, I have some questions.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Oppenheim.
Thank you, Ms. Sims. And thank you, Chief Jones, for your work on this again. I'm just wondering, I asked before the meeting, but I do just want to ask again, do Jackson Police Department, do they get any kind of training in adolescent or child behavior, brain development, or anything like that? Do they get any kind of training?
To my knowledge, the average police officer, as part of his basic training, does not receive that specific training. It is received by someone. I'm sorry. Please.
And well, yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just going by the state standards. There's no state mandate that that type of training be provided to a basic police officer, but there are some in the department that have received that training as a part of their advanced duties in the Jackson Police Department.
And will we be providing any kind of training of the sort for the particular police officers who could be hired to do this work?
There are no plans at this time to provide that training, sir.
And so can you kind of explain the differentiation of roles between the JPD and our own internal school resource officers, safety security officers at events that we're being asked to vote on?
Yes, so they serve a similar function. They work together. We usually try to the best of our ability to partner these officers up. The reason being is the additional resources that the Jackson Police Department provides also gives us a more candid community view. These officers who work the games are from the community. They work that precinct. They are aware of emerging issues in the community that we may not be aware of in the school. So we share information in real-time fashion, and we work together to resolve any issues that may come up at the games.
So if we're working together, would we be able to identify a child who maybe acts stupid at a game versus a child who's doing something criminal, and are we able to intervene if a police officer is with that child and that child does not need to be arrested? Are we able to intervene and make sure that it is handled in another manner?
We are able to work with them in identifying a child whose behavior is aberrant and not criminal. Yes, sir. But in terms of intervening, if it is a criminal act, the agreement states, and it's been well recognized, that a police officer cannot be retarded or impeded from doing his official duties as a police officer if a crime is committed in his or her presence. So we don't intervene in that, but we do work with them on the difference between a criminal act or an administrative issue that the administrator on the field can handle.
Thank you for that. And then the last question is a little bit related to some of the concerns that have been raised about the vandalism at Callaway and Murrah related to rivalry and all that kind of inappropriate stuff that's been going on. But colleagues, one of my concerns is that we're going to do another contract for more security, yet I have deep concerns about our own department's ability to be able to cover the things that they're already supposed to be covering. Whether it's, providing kind of that external security in the evening times of our buildings, and then their various presence on our campus. So, along with not getting some of that adolescent and child brain development training, whether it's the other kind of restorative practices of TBIS or Tools for Life, I just continue to have concerns about our relationship both with law enforcement externally and then our own internal security department. So I'm just going to raise that, and then I'm going to leave that there for now with no other questions right now.
Thank you, Mr. Oppenheim. We're going to have a question now from Mr. Jones.
Thank you so much. Yes, as it relates to those incidents that were noted via the media, how is security cameras working over there, or the security system working over there?
Sir, yes, sir.
Okay, so they were on?
Sir, yes, sir.
Okay. The other question is, there's been some other incidents reported as well, where down south at the transportation, I understand there was some, we had an incident down there. Do we have cameras and things down there as well?
Sir, yes, sir.
Okay. And there was what type of trigger? Because if that something went into a building, the alarm system didn't come on, or cameras weren't working, how do we handle that?
So the question is, how would you handle it if the alarm did not come on?
Yes. So are all the alarms and cameras are working is what I'm asking.
We do have some connectivity issues in the district, and it's site-specific. So if I'm answering your question correctly, there are some.
Yeah, but we
And I mean, perhaps why Chief Jones is hesitant to answer your question is because you're getting into specific security measures at individual buildings and what they are and how they work, and particularly if some aren't working, you don't necessarily want to talk about that in open session. I think, if nothing else, maybe your questions you might want to ask Chief about in executive session.
Okay, sound good. Thank you so much for the guidance.
All right. I actually have a question on item F. And Chief Jones, help me understand what the patrolling officers do at the games and how does that work? Certain games are high profile, like the Callaway Murrah games, and then there may be some games that may not be as high profile. And also the graduation ceremonies. Would you kind of talk to us about what your plans are in use of the police officers?
Yes, so each game we do a pre-game plan or pre-event planning session that involves the officers as well as the Jackson Police Department. In fact, the agreement speaks to us having some type of written communication before each game. But we actually meet with the precinct commanders from the Jackson Police Department as well as the site supervisors who will be providing the services at the games. We develop a strategy, which is in writing, that we use as our guiding principles for that particular game. We have overlapping foot patrols, we have overlapping vehicular patrols. These outside patrols are to enhance the security measures for those individuals who park at the games, as well as they walk back and forth to the games. We want a very high visible presence, if you would, which serves as a deterrent for those individuals and a safety factor as well for individuals. When they come in, they see officers and they feel comfortable. So we make sure that we have a very visible presence at all the games. As it relates to the graduation, our biggest issue there is, again, providing that service, directing individuals where they need to go. We receive great support from the Jackson Police Department in terms of traffic control on High Street and Jefferson Street, which are choke points. The officers from the police department work those traffic lights for us and help us with access.
Okay. All right, thank you. I would personally like to amend or this agreement, and Chief Jones, would you help me understand, the board understand, in years past, what amounts we have actually used, what amounts you foresee, and what's your justification of this dollar amount for this year?
I personally have been intimately involved in this contract for the last 16 years. And up until this year, it's been about the same amount, about $150,000. That's based on the expected crowds and the events that we have. We want to make sure that each game is adequately staffed, and we make sure that we have that because the way that we're billed now, the way that we pay is differently the last 3 years than it has been in the past. We actually have to pay the salaries of the officers, the fringe benefits, and any other expenses associated with the use of that officer as opposed to a flat rate. So we make sure that we factor in enough for that. Now, as we go through the season, we look at each game to make sure that we're adequately staffed. You mentioned, or somebody did, I'm sorry, the game Friday night, Murrah and Callaway. That game traditionally has a number of officers based on the previous years and what we expect to happen. When there are emerging issues that come about, we make sure that we staff accordingly. If there are emerging trends in the community, we make sure that we're staffed accordingly. And reaching out not just with the Jackson Police Department, but our sister agencies throughout the metro area to make sure that we're staffed adequately. So that's how we come up with that amount. This year, you'll see a reduction in the amount from $150,000 in the previous years to $105,000. We're not decreasing our services, but we now are in a better position to be self-sufficient, self-sustained. So those roles are being absorbed, if you will, by our own officers in our department.
Okay. And how much of the set-aside amounts was used in the last couple of years?
We've fallen way short of the amount of monies that were projected. I don't have the exact figures in front of me, but as we move through the school, as we move through the season, we find that we're able to use more of our officers and less depending upon the games. But we have turned back in a significant portion of that money that were not spent because they were not needed for those games.
Okay. And do you have any idea of the amount of money you turned back in?
Turn back in. Ms. Miller said somewhere around at least 20 to 25,000. I remember that number that we've turned back in.
That is on a budget of 150,000.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. I move that I would like to make an amendment to this particular item here, that we approve it, but we approve it at a different amount. I move that we approve it at 75,000 versus the 105. And if there's need be, Chief Jones, you come back to us and let us know there's more monies needed.
Yes, ma'am.
With that said, so I move that we approve this at 75,000 with the option to come back later in the school year to gain more funds up to the 105.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I get a second on that motion?
Second.
Not a motion.
Could you explain that? Can you say that another time?
We're amending from 105 to 75 with the option to come back to get additional funds if needed.
Based on what?
Based upon use and our own staff being able to patrol and do some things that we will not need the Jackson Police Department to do. And possible rearrangements of graduation, flow of traffic, and so forth.
Well, I'm not going to support this contract anyways, because I already have concerns that we spend about 4 times per security person in the district than we do per child. So I'm going to end up voting no either way. So I'll leave that to my colleagues.
All right. Again, there's an amendment of the amount for 75. If there's not a motion, it's going to die.
I believe Ms. Johnson.
Oh,
Johnson had a second.
Did you second? I'm sorry. Ms. Johnson? I can barely see you behind Ms. Jones. Okay, so we did get a motion and a second. Now we're ready to vote on item number F. All in favor?
No.
Okay, we have 2 yeses, 1 no, and 2 noes, and 2 yeses. That means the item fails. Okay. Mr. Jones, you have to come back. Thank you. All right.
So you could still have action on the existing.
The existing, okay.
I support that.
All right. We'll bring it back to the floor. What you make
Motion to so move.
for 105. Okay. Second.
Second.
All right. Mr. Jones for 105. Second by Mrs. Johnson. We're ready to vote. All in favor?
What are we voting on? I didn't hear that.
Still item F. The amendment failed for 75,000. Now we're voting for 105. Same item F. So
no.
We're ready to vote. Mr. Oppenheim says no. All in favor? We have 3 in favor and 1 no. Thank you. All right, now we're ready to move on to item G, approval for amendment for consulting services between the Bailey Educational Group and Jackson Public Schools. Dr. Merritt, would you like to come? It did pass.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Murray Ms. Sims and Board. The recommended action is the administration recommends an extension of the contract to serve as an external corrective action plan administrator for the Bailey Education Group.
Okay, I have a question. Now, we've just paid them, I think, $95,000 for their original services. Is that correct?
Yes.
And this is an extension of their services. Now, with the CAP plan being 90% complete that you just reported earlier, what services are they going to do differently from what they've already extended to us?
So-
what are our gains for the additional?
So in addition to assisting with the CAP implementation, as we anticipate the audit findings, they will assist in that process. As we've played out various scenarios, when we get the audit report back, we will have possibly with one scenario 10 days to respond. They do have the expertise that's needed with the individuals that we've been working with to assist the staff in responding in an appropriate manner. That's one scenario. Another scenario may be 30 days to respond, but we want to make sure that we move with a sense of urgency in addressing the CAP, and we have the right support in doing so as we respond appropriately.
All right.
Yes, and again, to add on to that, again, we have played this out, and we're going to be very aggressive in whatever the results are. And we need, we think that with their expertise, we've talked through all of those scenarios, worst case, best case, and we need some support on the ground to help us on the 31st to start responding. And we feel like they will be able to provide that support for us to assist us in putting this together.
All right, thank you. Mr. Jones.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Sims. The question I have is, has the Bailey Group, the consultant, been providing monthly summaries of the work they've been doing?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. The other question is, which I posed several times before, is when and where are those reports going to be made available to the board? When are we going to get these updates that they're doing monthly?
Well, we provide, we can provide for you, we provide a report every board meeting through this mechanism. But we can, if you, the written copies, we can provide that for you. But our updates come as requested by the board, that we provide for you all an update at every board meeting. So we utilize this process for doing that. And so if the request now is that we receive the actual copies that come from them, we can provide that information for you without a problem.
Yes, or that would be great for us to have that, so we'll know where we are. But also, too, if it's also part of this process that you have, that you're presenting, where they can actually come and present to us or provide some update, Madam President, then that would definitely benefit us as well. But we most definitely, I think the board should have those monthly summaries, since they are working on that CAP plan for us.
Yes, if that's the will of the board, we definitely can provide that again, but they are always available to support. It was the administration's decision to bring forward this process, but if that's the request, we can have them come and provide an update.
It would be good if we could see that. They're giving us a monthly report.
Yes, we receive work reports whenever they're in the district, monthly reports.
Okay. It would be good if we could see it.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. If you provide that, that would be great. Any other questions for item G? All right, no other questions for item G. Can I get a motion for the floor, please?
So moved.
So moved.
All right, Mr. Jones moved, and then Mr. Oppenheim second. All right, ready to vote? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous vote. Now we're going to go back to item B. Item B would be memorandum of agreement between Jackson Public Schools and Teach for America. Mrs. Lyons. She's already there.
How are you?
Hi.
We're asking for approval of the MOA between Jackson Public Schools and Teach for America.
Any questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead, Mr. Oppenheim.
Yeah, from my understanding, we pay the teachers their full salary, and then we give them an additional $5,000 to Teach for America. Are we able to get our own personnel who aren't Teach for America into the professional development that we're paying for these 20 teachers?
Yes, sir, we are.
So is that already written into the agreement that
It is.
that's
Yes, sir,
Sorry?
it is. We actually met today with Teach for America, and that is something that's available through the contract. So we pay for that professional development. Teachers within our district that are not Teach for America teachers can take advantage of that resource, as well as the 20 Teach for America teachers. So not only do we pay for the support from Teach for America for those teachers, other teachers can take advantage of that as well.
Would that also include support in helping us identify long-term permanent teachers, given the numbers of vacancies that we have?
Identifying specifically what, can you go a little further with that?
Sorry?
I'm not clearly understanding what you're asking. Can you ask?
I mean, my question is around, we're going to give them a ton of money, not a ton of money, I think it is a ton of money, relatively speaking, to train professional development for Teach for America and some of our staff. And we have a big teacher shortage, and I understand that obviously we're going to get 20 slots filled, but I'm concerned about using extra money on that when we could use it to go out and recruit long-term teachers. You know, if $100,000 is going to allow us to go recruit teachers or help some of our current teachers pass the praxis or whatnot, I wonder if we could be using that money elsewhere.
Well, we do have other dollars that are being used for that, and we have extensive dollars that are left over because of the teacher shortage. For example, we provide bonuses and some other things, and we still have those funds available. So this is not, this 100,000 is not taking from that. We think that it's a good investment. We have 20, not slots, we have 20 teachers that are on the ground right now certified that are working, and these teachers will be provided. They will receive training, and also we are collaborating with our professional development department to possibly support our limited service teachers through this same process, through this online testing and some on-site testing. So that has been something that I don't think we've taken advantage of in the past, the PD, but we spend extensive amounts of dollars on professional development, and so we think that the getting the teachers coupled with professional development is a worthwhile investment for us.
Yeah, thank you for that. I just have one more question that I also asked kind of pre-board meeting. What kind of culturally responsive pedagogy or learning are the Teach for America's teachers receiving before they come into our school district? Yeah, that's my question.
Well, specifically, I can't speak to that, but one thing we did find out today, that in the past they've done recruitment all over the country. For example, they gave us a number of about 30,000 teachers that they might have in their pool, and a very small number traditionally might come from Mississippi. Now they're being very aggressive in recruiting in-state, so at Jackson State, at Mississippi State, at Tougaloo, so that the students from the community will be able to pull from. So that's a new approach that they're taking to Teach for America. So we think that we'll be able to, she made a comment today in our conversation, teachers won't have to go back home, they'll already be at home. And so that's the approach that we're taking now with our Teach for America. We're looking to try to get people from the state, from the city, in the Teach for America program, so they'll be more apt to stay after 2 years.
Thank you for that. And then just last question that I just thought of. Teach for America is very closely aligned to the charter school privatization movement. And I know, at least in Jackson, from my understanding, they've very much pointed teachers towards the charter schools. Do we have any kind of way to gauge that we're not going to, lose out or have any issues should suddenly positions become available inside the charter schools that these teachers are being asked to go fill?
I don't know. Attorney Shepard may be better poised to answer that, but my understanding is they have a 2-year commitment, and that they are through our contract with them. Those individuals are obligated for those 2 years.
Mr. Oppenheim, does that answer your question?
Did what answer my question? I didn't hear an answer. Sorry.
They have a 2-year commitment through the contract, and they are obligated to stay for those 2 years. After the 2 years, then they may opt to go somewhere else, another district, home, charter school. But for those 2 years, they are contracted to stay with us.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? I have one. Actually, a couple of questions. Attorney Shepard, is there any way that we can negotiate the $5,000? Has anybody looked at that or asked? Is that the standard price that we're paying all districts, or is there negotiating a price?
We've talked about the fee, and the fee has actually increased over the past 3 or 4 years. But it's increased because, like everyone, they've been cut about $6 million from the state. So as the state provided dollars for them to be able to kind of supplement what districts will have to pay, and as the state cuts, of course, they have expenses that they incur as well. So we did talk about the fee, and the fee is what it is at this point.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And lastly, the 2-year commitment. Mm-hmm. Can we get an extension on that? We're investing heavily to get that teacher for 2 years.
We can ask for an extension, and that would just be a negotiable item. I'm not sure if they would do it. By the same token, we would have to make sure that these are teachers that we really wanted to invest in.
Exactly.
For a multi-year contract. There is allowable under state statute a multiple-year contract for teachers. But if that's something we wanted under this particular contract with Teach for America, we would just have to approach them and see if they would be agreeable to it.
Okay. So in essence, what we're asking, rather than a 2-year contract, maybe a multiple-year contract now, is that would that look like a first-year teacher having a 3-year contract, or would it just allow for an extension maybe for the 3rd year?
I think it would allow for an extension for the 3rd year. You could actually do it both ways. We typically have not done all 3-year contracts for teachers. For this particular agreement, as I understand it, the teachers get a 1-year contract, but the company has assured us that they would remain for 2 years. And so if we wanted to ask for 3 years, I think the administration would probably want it to be the same way. Each teacher would get a 1-year contract each year, but the company ensures that they remain.
Okay. Well, can we amend the contract to say we could ask for that 3rd year? However, I'm understanding each year we as a school board can say this is a good teacher, and we can say we want that teacher back the 2nd year. Do we have that option?
Well, we do 1-year contracts. So again, I think the commitment from Teach for America is for 2 years, but we do 1-year contracts.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So in essence, what I'm asking, can we ask them for 3 years to kind of recoup some of our investment into that particular, with the 2-year payment, but 3-year commitment of the teacher?
We can certainly ask. If we're not offering any more money, I don't know how willing they would be receptive. I don't know how receptive they would be.
I just believe you ask not, you get not. You don't get anything if you don't ask for it. So at least we can ask for it. Okay.
I have a question. Yeah. Ms. Lyons, I noticed that we have the $5,000 professional development or whatever, that goes toward. Will the teachers that we have already in our midst, will they be able to use that same training or that same dollars for training, I should say, professional development, to go toward national certifications or what have you? Does that play a role in this So how can we leverage this for growing our teachers' capacity through a national certification?
Well, the national certification, national board is a different process. But as far as we have specific, we have a policy that'll be coming before you all for revision soon that speaks to the number of credits that a teacher will need to have just in our system. So they'll be able to get hours, CEUs through that process. So we think we're going to be working with the Professional Development Office to make sure that we leverage these slots. Again, today we had the conversation, and this is available for us, and we're going to take advantage of it through our Professional Development Office to make sure that teachers are participating in that training.
Okay.
That we're paying for already.
Okay. All right, great deal. And the reason, another question in this is as it relates to teachers that are in those specialized areas such as IB or AP, advanced placement, and as well as IB programs. Will these dollars be able to support their initiatives toward professional development they will need as they instruct those courses?
No, sir, but we have some additional dollars through some Title IV dollars through ESSA, some new money that we will be able to support those efforts, and we'll be bringing that to you all.
What does that look like in terms of time frame, in terms of those teachers getting up to speed?
Well, the training, Dr. Dave, we've actually already met. This is, again, some new money that we will have through the ESSA, the new law, the new flexibility that exists in the state and federal dollars. So we've looked at the law, at the funds, and we'll be able to support those special programs. The goal is to increase the number of students that are participating in high-level courses, advanced courses, and having those IB teachers trained, APAC teachers trained, dual credit, paying for supporting students in dual credit, dual enrollment is directly aligned with increasing the number of students that are in those courses. So we'll be able to support that training through that mechanism as opposed to this.
Okay, so how long before that rollout happens?
So we're working on that now. Again, once the funds are released, we've already gotten the business rules on how to handle it. We're just waiting on the dollars to be released to us this year.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So students, say for instance, going to the second half of the year, will be able to take advantage of the dual enroll.
Well, right now, no. Those students are being scheduled as we speak. We're doing some very creative things with students to increase. What we've said is we want to double the number of students that are in those courses for next year. So we're working with high schools, looking at schedules, making sure that we get those students registered in those classes, because we anticipate being able to spend those dollars in that area. We've already been given those instructions, so we just have to wait for the dollars to be released.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Are there any other questions?
I just have a follow-up question.
Go ahead, Mr. Oppenheim.
Thank you. It was that data question. I think it'd be really helpful, and I ask this every year, the Teach for America contract comes in front of us, to get some data as to how they perform in comparison to their, similar situated educators within the district. Even if that's, retrospective to the TFA teachers who've been in the district in the past, I think that'd be really helpful, given we're giving extra investment into this company. I see it as kind of like a consulting thing where we would expect data on performance as well.
Okay. Mr. Oppenheim, and we actually did have that conversation today. We can get that data, but just a note, TFA, the individuals that teach with TFA, they have a one year, 1 month growth average across the board for the teachers that are in the TFA program. So students that they are working with, on average, gain 1 year and 1 month worth of growth. So which is pretty good, but of course, we need more than that, and their aim is to be higher. But we have asked them to create those kind of data sets for us moving forward. But they do have that current data right now.
And that's their data or our data?
Well, that's the data they provided to us. But again, we've asked to, and we'll work. Ms. Lyons and I actually talked this morning about working with our data office to make sure that we do our own assessment so we can have some comparative data.
Okay, thank you.
I concur with Mr. Oppenheim. We definitely need to get that data from our own perspective, so when this contract comes back up next year or the following year, that we'll have what their results are and how they've been able to help grow our students. With that said, we're going to get a motion on the floor. Oh, now we have a question.
I've got one more question. I'd like to know where these teachers, what schools these teachers are in.
Let's see. We have one at Board Elementary School, one at Dawson, one at Hardy, one at Jim Hill, one at Kirksey, 2 at Northwest, 2 at Oak Forest, 3 at Provine, 1 at Wingfield, 2 at Wingfield, and 1 at Clausell.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any more questions? Can I get a motion for the floor, please?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Mrs. Johnson, second by Mr. Jones. Ready to vote? All in favor? Raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
No.
Mr. Oppenheim?
No.
Okay, that's 3, 4, 1 against. Thank you. Now we're moving on to approval of personnel matters. Mrs. Lyon, you disappeared.
Item C.
Oh, we got C. We didn't go to C.
Item C.
Item C. Let's go to C. A memorandum of understanding between Jackson Public Schools and Hinds County Mental Health Commission doing business as Behavioral Health Services. Hello.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Are there any questions?
If you all have any questions,
All right. Any questions for C?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Oppenheim.
Thanks, Ms. Sims. I really like this. I like that Hinds Behavioral Health is in our district. I'm a little bit concerned about this issue that they serve students age 3 to 18, yet we only allow them to serve their clients in the elementary school. And so I have a little bit of concern about the contract with the other provider who serves middle school and high school, that somehow keeps Hinds Behavioral Health from being able to serve their clients on our campuses, which is the ideal place for them to meet with them. So I'm wondering if we could go back and review contracts to ensure that Hinds Behavioral Health, which is a not-for-profit, is able to serve their clients on our campuses.
Mr. Oppenheim, we will take another look at that. You're correct that traditionally, because Marion Counseling provides services to the secondary level, then Hinds only serves the elementary level. But we will take another look at that to make sure, or to see what is the best way for Hinds to serve their clients without causing any confusion between the two vendors.
Yeah, because I could imagine a child, needing to see the counselor and happens to be a Hinds Behavioral Health child, but then has to see Marion Counseling or something like that on campus, and suddenly you're dealing with all kinds of other kind of ethical issues, I would imagine. And so I would appreciate taking a deeper look in that, and if we need to bring somebody else's contract back in front of us to look at, would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
You're welcome. We'll do that.
Thank you, Mr. Oppenheim. Any other questions?
No, you covered it.
Okay. Ms. Shepherd, should we, what is your suggestion here on this particular item?
I think it's fine to go ahead and approve it. What we will need to do is just talk with the administration and just see if we can work out something. That issue has been raised in the past, and I'm not really sure how we resolved it. It may have been that the child got a dismissal and went to the behavioral contractor's office, but we just want to take a look at it. I don't think it's any reason not to go ahead with the contract, and if we find a way that will work for all the parties, we'll certainly bring it back to you.
All right, thank you. All right, with that said, any other questions? All right, we're ready for a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Mr. Oppenheim, second by Mr. Jones. Ready to vote? All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
All right, it is a unanimous vote. Thank you so much. I believe we have covered all our consent agenda items. Have we missed any?
No.
We've done all of them. Now we're ready for consent agenda items, personnel. Are there any items that we need to have pulled on this? No pulls? Any questions? No questions. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Oppenheim, second by Mrs. Johnson. Ready to vote? All in favor? Raise your hand or say aye.
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 Great. It is a unanimous vote. Thank you so much. We move forward to other business. Other business.
I have a couple of questions, items.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. First, I didn't get a chance earlier to commend Dr. Murray and his staff on moving the needle on a lot of those math indicators, so thank you for your work on that. The other couple points I wanted to make, one on the student representation, I appreciate the work going on. I think we need to clarify some things because I think different information is being given to different school principals. I know I've had two different experiences with different information, so I hope we could follow up with that and make sure that elections are happening at each of the high schools, within the next week or two, and that maybe by the next board meeting or the middle board meeting in September, we could have those officers placed from those schools.
Okay, Mr. Oppenheim, I think Mr. Jones did Provine and Jim Hill. I did Wingfield and Forest Hill. So we've got 2 or 3 more to go yet.
I did Callaway.
Okay, Callaway has been done, so that leaves Mara and Lanier as the only 2 schools that have not had a board member to come out to do a representation. Have you already done Mara and Lanier?
So I've been to Mara and Lanier, and Lanier wasn't clear on their process, and neither was Mara, that they actually had to do elections, and that it wasn't just board selecting students. So I just want to make sure that we're clear and consistent based on the policy that was passed.
Okay. We'll follow up on that and provide clarity to those principals. What we've asked is that all schools hold elections by September 1st, on September 1st, and have someone in place by after we return from Labor Day. So we'll clarify that with the high school principals tomorrow.
Great. Thank you.
I might add, Wingfield and Forest Hill were a welcome delight. Both of them really wrapped around the idea of that student representation, and Wingfield is expanding by doing a representation and a council to go along with feeding into that representative the information from the middle school and elementary school. So I was really thrilled about that, and Wingfield is coming along with that same concept, so I really applaud the students for wanting to be student servants for the school board. I was really excited about it. Anybody else had an experience that they'd like to share?
Oh, I enjoyed my time with the students at Callaway, and they seem pretty excited, so we'll see.
Well, this is I think this is going to be one of the few in Mississippi. I believe it may be the only student representative with a school board member in Mississippi. So the students are gravitating to it and ready for elections, at least for those schools that we've contacted. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, my visits at Provine and Jim Hill were just phenomenal. The awareness and as well as the attentiveness of the students, they were well spoken. They asked great questions. They were
thought-out questions. They were very energetic about it. At Jim Hill on yesterday, the IB class is where I was, and we actually put on a seminar on how to poll questions, how to address questions. So it was really a great environment. It was student-led, so they're doing a phenomenal job over there. And I've also reached out today at a community meeting at Blackburn, which Dr. Nelson put on a great program this morning. I had several community people there, but in that meeting, saw one of our election commissioners, Ms. Summers, and we talked, and we're going to go back over and at Provine and Jim Hill, and she's going to talk with them about the legislative as well as election process. And so it was a good really good feeling, good feedback from the students yesterday and the day before.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I had a great experience at Murray. The students were very excited and whatnot. So, hopefully once I meet with the students at Lanier and everything's clear around elections, then we're good to go. My only other item was the note that I raised about the renaming of school buildings. This is something that I've brought up multiple times over the last couple of years, and it's kind of keeps on moving aside. And given the current state of affairs in our country, I think we need to revisit this and get moving, since we have at least 4 active schools with Confederate general names on them.
All right, Mr. Oppenheimer.
And I could even resuggest the I'm not asking for like a decision tonight, but I could resuggest and resend kind of my thoughts on how to get that done in an efficient way.
Okay. Why don't we just put you in charge of a committee and let you work with another board member to get us some dialogue of questions, and as well as get an understanding from our community. I'm doing that, Mr. Oppenheim.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'd like to serve on that committee.
Okay. Mr. Oppenheim and Mrs. Johnson, and if you all would get together and decide how we're going to formulate it so we can.
Okay, thank you.
Among ourselves and for the community. Thank you, Mrs. Johnson and Mr. Oppenheim. Any other business?
I have one. I was attended the game on Friday night over at Hughes Field between 2 great schools, and I was a little concerned, and got a lot of phone calls. Stopped in Walmart about how the facility, our presentation, and one of the things that's concerning is that, first of all, I am a product of athletics. I was fortunate to go through Wingfield and able to receive my scholarship, which financed my college education. And one of the things that really stood out to me from a concerning standpoint is that these children, or these students and these parents, worked all spring. They worked all summer. And I know that the cheerleaders, the band members, the managers, the family members that came out to support them should have seen a better presentation from us. I know I have talked to Dr. Murray about this, and I know that we have to ensure that we respect the efforts of our children, those sponsors, those coaches who spend countless hours out there, and to see or to be a part of, and also have to address to parents what we are about our presentation. It was a little bit. I was taken back, but also too, I thought back on as a student athlete here at JPS out of Wingfield. And I thought about the opportunities that were prepared and presented for me. And I am very blessed to have had a different presentation for opening season. And I know that because of that, that platform enabled me to realize those efforts that put in over the summers and the springs and so on, because we cannot say whether or not what one's destination is, but we are in control of that platform to position them to elevate to the levels that we don't know they are sent to. And so I know I expressed with Dr. Murray about this, but I know that there's been some serious concerns from the community about how we are prepping and preparing our venues for these students, how we're preparing these venues for these community members, how we're preparing these venues for our business community. And we perhaps in some format or some form need to take a good look at that. Because, again, these are extracurricular activities that propel youngsters. These extracurricular activities that gives them an opportunity to see what their dedication and what their commitment is, and also builds a good, healthy, strong young individual that we're looking at to be leaders for us. And I think that that we really need to understand our role in this process of ensuring that our children, our students, are in the best possible situation we can find them in. And so I really thank you all for hearing this, but it really is very, very, I was very, very disappointed what I witnessed and what I experienced. Very disappointed. Thank you.
All right. Dr. Murray, do we have any movement on those athletic fields for preparation for this week for it to be in a better condition?
Well, again, the athletic fields are, a priority as always, and we don't make excuses. I've not. I've talked with multiple parents. I've not received the same feedback, but again, we don't make excuses for the fields. We will. Dr. Lockett and I have met with the facilities, and we have very high expectations. We've communicated that, and the fields will be in optimum shape for moving forward. But again, I have had conversation with multiple parents, band members, and so. But again, we will. We're not going to, make excuses for our facilities. Last week there was some. I talked with Dr. Lockett and his team about why the grass may have been higher than usual, and again, we won't make excuses for that. We'll make sure that the facilities are cut, that the markings are where they need to be, and we've had that conversation, and we'll be accountable for that moving forward.
Thank you, Dr. Murray and Dr. Lockett. All right, any other questions, any new business? I have one thing that Dr. Murray and the board has already approved, and that is our strategic plan, modifying, making sure we have the best plan available for our children to succeed. We're still waiting for Mississippi School Board Association to get back with us to give us a specific date. As I've talked to Mrs. Jackson, from what our understanding is, we started off with a half day, but it possibly will be a full day program. So we just need to get together on that date and make ourselves available. The last thing is board members, she's asking us to what questions or what strategies we need to present to her. So she will also present that best information as we work through this work session. So I would ask that you all would just send me what your questions are, what you would like to see the session to include, so we're best prepared. And lastly, Mrs. Turner has asked that we have our evaluation sent in for Dr. Murray, and I'm not sure if you have them all. So now executive session will go from there. All right, any other questions, any other open items? All right, with that said, we thank our staff, our community, and our parents for attending our August 24th, 2017 board meeting. We have
two other.
Yes. So now we need to close the meeting.
Motion to close the meeting to consider executive session.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All right, so we have moved in second. Close the meeting. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Okay, very good. Now we will move to
Clear the room.
clear the room. Thank you. Good night, everybody.